Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
It's Friday, and you know who is here. Dr. Heineman. Can we start out with state?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, from Zach Fink, New York 1, Thursday afternoon. Zach Fink says that the state Senate Republicans will be meeting in Albany today,
Yes.
Friday, November the 16th, to determine who's going to be the Senate minority leadership.
Yes.
Now, in his article, Zach Fink doesn't come out and hit you over the head with it, but basically what he's saying here is that Long Island Republican State Senator John Flanagan, who's in competition with upstate State Senator Kathy Young for the Republican minority leadership job. Basically, what Zach Fink says is that Flanagan's trying to pull a couple different fast ones. Number one, he wants he's calling for an early vote on this. And Fink, without hitting you over the head, tells you that that's because State Senator Sue Serino of Dutchess County, who's a young supporter, won't be able to make that vote.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yes, and he says, Zach Fink also says that Flanagan wants a secret vote on this.
Yeah, well, I think that could work against Flanagan, tell you the truth. He may have outmaneuvered himself there. Because I'm thinking, and I got to tell you, we're working on at least one state senator from down the Long Island area, down around Westchester and that area, who might well be a young supporter if he gets a shot at a secret ballot. I can't name the person, and I don't know that I haven't even talked.
That's interesting.
I haven't even talked to Senator Young about it, but we certainly have some friends who know him pretty well, and I'm not going to say any more about that. But I would think that he might be willing to, on a secret ballot, go with Young. But we don't know, and he hasn't committed as far as I know. Maybe he has committed publicly. That doesn't mean he can't change his vote in a secret ballot. So I think one of the problems Flanagan could have with this is he might have what he thinks are public commitments, and then they go to a secret ballot. Some of those commitments might disappear. So in any case, to bring our listeners up to speed here, apparently Flanagan, in the middle of the summer or thereabouts, took away from Senator Young the coordination of the the election of the state Senate.
Really? So Senator Young didn't have anything to do with...
Yeah, she was moved off to the side.
So
and
she's not responsible for the Senate election law?
No. Flanagan should take full responsibility for the wonderful job he did, setting history by giving one party one of the largest, I think the largest majority in the state Senate in the past century. It's a real flood there for the Democrats.
On Thursday's Newsmaker show, Hornell Mayor John Buckley said, I've been in the room with John Flanagan and I've been in the room with Senator Kathy Young, and Flanagan is far less impressive and not the guy you want in a fight.
Yeah, no, Young is very good. And I think I don't know what the New York State Republicans are doing there in the Senate. You get a little questionable about Flanagan and his relationship to Governor Cuomo. He may well have some obligations and commitments there that we don't know anything about. So he certainly did in several of these Senate races. So, and I think thinking on the total wipeout that the Republicans got here at the state Senate level, I think the one advantage, and there were a number of advantages I think the Democrats had, but the one advantage they had and have now is that they have a leader who is basically coordinating and directing the effort, and that, of course, is Governor Cuomo. And the Republicans don't have anybody who can step in and fill those kinds of shoes. And so that worked very effectively for the governor in this last election, and I think it is not going to work well for the Republicans in the state Senate in the years to come here. And trying to recoup that loss, Flanagan he's just obviously doesn't have the wherewithal to pull that off. Young, on the other hand, has a pretty good idea how to go about campaigning and putting together victories. And frankly, 2 years from now, if the Republicans can pick up two or three seats, and then in 2022, maybe pick up a few more, they can maybe hold their own. They're down at least 17 seats. So that means that,
the GOP.
Yeah.
What about Simca Felder? Do we know he's without a party right now, from what I understand?
Yeah, he's off in the corner somewhere. And so the Republicans have basically, I think, 23 votes left in the state Senate. So that means Kathy Young has to pick up 11 or 12. She should be in pretty good shape. Now, what often happens in these cases, and I don't know what will happen today, is that you got Young and Flanagan going against each other. Very often you end up some compromise candidate coming out of the woodwork. So we'll see how that plays. On the other hand, I don't know where Flanagan gets off being able to push this meeting today if there's one or two senators who can't make it. I mean, that's does that mean he's got the votes then to continue as a minority leader? I don't know. At any rate, it's kind of an important vote for Republicans.
I think you could say it's important for upstate with Senator Young's connection to the story.
Yeah, well, it's very important. The results of this, Democrat dominance, it's very unlike at the national level. You have no checks and balances really in the state system, so that the power of the Democrats now in the Senate and the Assembly, they can just push through anything they want. And I don't know how Heastie runs the Assembly, but when Sheldon Silver was running the Assembly, the Republicans couldn't even introduce legislation. They couldn't get anything even on the floor. And so if you wanted to get something on the floor, you had to get a Democrat who was willing to push it for you. And some Democrats would, from Western New York, to help each other out. But there's no reason they had to, that's for sure. And there's certainly no reason now that any of the Democrat senators have to reach out to help upstate New York, because New York City and the downstate counties they're definitely in the driver's seat.
All right, moving on to a couple state issues. State lawmakers deserve a pay raise, says Governor Andrew Cuomo. How will that go with voters in New York State?
I don't think it makes any difference. They'll push it through. Thing is about this paying legislators, again, this is something I cover in my class again and again. The issue is not as it's presented by the media. The fact is, the lower you keep the salaries for legislators in the state, or at the national level for that matter, the more power you give moneyed interests. Because your basic working class person, your basic middle class person can't afford to run for the state legislature. So what you end up is, in many respects, is with a lot of lawyers, retired people who are fairly wealthy who can afford to take the time to run, and salesmen, insurance salesmen, people of that sort. A huge number of people who can afford, in fact, to run and serve in the legislature. So all this effort to somehow not reward state legislators or county legislators, as far as that's concerned, is just an oblique effort to support the wealthy. And I mean, it's just that simple. But you watch the press and some of these other media people go on and on about it. It's like it's outrageous that we pay these people what we do, and we certainly don't overpay them. I don't care whether it's Democrats or Republicans. These people are not overpaid.
That's interesting, Doc. You know, I think a lot of these hosts I think, A, uninformed, and B, need to talk about something, and it's easy to go in a rant on something like that.
Oh, yeah, and a lot of the public says, why we're paying them. And I don't know what we're paying them now, but by the time you get done traveling from Western New York, having to stay in Albany, traveling back, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, it's pretty onerous. And it costs money. Now, people in the majority, they get various perks of one sort or another, so they get some extra money there. But basically, you've got people who have to find some sugar daddy somewhere in terms of providing them financial help and campaign help, or you have to have a job that allows you free time to go back and forth and allows you to make enough money to survive without having to depend on your income from the state legislature. And so I think Cuomo will take this shot, and he really doesn't care what the public thinks at this point. And that's this next year is especially dangerous for Republicans.
Doc, yeah. I talked a couple minutes ago about talk show hosts who are uninformed. I think one of the most uninformed statements in New York State is this idea that it doesn't matter who's in charge of the state Senate, Democrats or Republicans, because both parties are exactly the same, say some talk show hosts. Well, shoot that one down, Doc, for me, because that's not true at all.
No, not at all. I mean, anybody who lives in New York, upstate New York knows that there's very different views in downstate New York. Now, the people in downstate New York maybe don't notice that difference as much because, frankly, they don't pay much attention to upstate New York and western New York. In fact, people like Schumer and Flanagan made a big thing about actually coming up to upstate. And I think Flanagan may have a cabin or something in Letchworth or somewhere up in that area, so he may have some idea.
He may be listening now.
Yeah, probably doesn't have much else to do at this point. Yeah, we'll put in a good word for Kathy Youngman if he is. No, it's they said, well, like Mr. Nojay there when I guess it was Spitzer was elected. He was on some sort of state committee to provide funding for indigent defendants. And the woman called him from New York City and said, she our Harvard degree in New York City, and said, well, listen, I'd like to get together for lunch sometime or breakfast, and we could talk about your position on this state committee. And Nojay says, you don't understand. I'm out here in Rochester, New York. He said, that's a bit of a trip. And she says, well, what train do I take? Do I take the A train, the B train, or whatever? I still had no idea, of New York State. So that's what you're dealing with, unfortunately.
Dr. Bob, and I'm getting this all from Spectrum News. Cuomo wants to tell the public that single-payer health care at the state level is unlikely.
Yeah, it's too expensive. Are you kidding me? But when it comes to things like providing free college tuition for state school students and things of that sort, he can pull that off because basically he's just piggybacking on what's already in place. But single-payer tuition or single-payer health care, man, that would be hugely expensive. And the thing with health care, and again, I'm a big supporter of providing health care for everybody, but what you've got to have is some kind of competition in there among providers. And so that's where the private insurance companies come into play. And they can hold costs down. They can make things a lot more. For example, in a recent situation in one of the institutions in the area, whom I won't mention, had health insurance with one company, and it's just switched because the company they had health insurance with on certain injections would reimburse at I think $350 an injection, and it was costing the doctor $750 for the serum. And so the institution has switched. They're going to a insurance company, private insurance company, that is more competitive and gives a better service. Now you can imagine what that'd be like if you just had one payer, namely the state. It would not be a good situation. It's all right for the state to get involved, don't get me wrong, but you've got to have some competition there. And so I think Cuomo's, can see the serious problem of that.
We've been talking state issues here in segment. We're going to take a quick break. We'll check the weather and back with Dr. Bob right after this.
The holidays mean company, and your flooring looks, well, not ready for company. Don't stress. Get your new floors installed today with Mullen Factory Direct Flooring in Almond. Payment options including 0% interest available, so you can keep your cash for your holiday shopping lists. Mullins has the area's largest selection of in-stock flooring. That means you can get your floors installed in plenty of time for the holidays. No box store wait at Mullen Factory Direct Flooring in Almond.
Want your vehicle looking just like it did when you drove it out of the dealership? Then stop by RBS Auto Detailing on Canisteo and Pine Streets in Hornell. RBS Auto Detailing. The before and after photos of your vehicle won't come close to showing the great job they'll do for you. Cleaning, washing, and waxing. They can get your vehicle looking nice and new both inside and out. RBS Auto Detailing on the corner of Canisteo and Pine Streets in Hornell.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carroll. And Rob, before we get to our weather, New York City, all the headlines out of New York City saying it's a disaster. Former mayoral candidate, Republican Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis is slamming Democrat New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. And all the newspapers are saying that New York City was not prepared for the 10 inches. Was that what they got?
No, they got 6 at Central Park, and to be honest, this is not de Blasio's fault. That Assemblywoman is wrong. The forecasts for the New York City area were garbage. We had mentioned that we do a client, New York City, had mentioned they would start as snow, but it looked like they were going to change the rain. They got 6 times what we thought they were going to get. I can tell you I've bid before in the past on a sanitation contract for snow and ice forecasting. I can tell you the people that get the contract every year, I don't know how they do it because they charge so little, but their forecast was calling for straight rain from what I understand, so there were no plows on any of the sanitation trucks, no salters ready. So that's kind of their problem from the standpoint of you get what you pay for. But even if it had been us, we would have had them unprepared for as much snow. And it came down all in a very short period of time, about a 3-4 hour span. They picked up 6 inches of snow. Anytime that happens, whether you're prepared or not, you're going to have a slow commute. But no plows in the trucks, Brian. They certainly were in trouble.
How's it look for us?
Well, looks like winter looking out there this morning. I mean, here it is, the middle of November, and we're looking at snow and school delays and all sorts of stuff. The snow, it's going to continue to fall off and on. We're going to be breezy. Any additional accumulations, they are under an inch. Temperatures, they're going to be around 40 today. Sunrise this morning was at 7:03. It'll set tonight at 4:47. Tonight we'll have clouds, a couple of flurries or snow showers. Lows overnight 30 to 35. Tomorrow there's the risk of scattered flurries and snow showers. Temperatures near 40. A few of us may pick up an inch tomorrow, Brian. And then there's a chance for flurries and snow showers at times Sunday. Highs right around 35.
Back with Dr. Bob. We got 5 minutes to talk national stuff. Being the considerate host that I am, I'm going to let you pick the topic.
Well, I just wanted to mention President Trump's kicking CNN out of the press conference. And who knows how all this will end up eventually. But I want to give a little example. When I was in graduate school, President Kennedy was president, and one of my major professors was a heck of a guy. I got a press pass, and of course the Vietnamese War was going on at this time. Got a press pass from some southwestern Texas newspaper, and went to the press conferences. Now, yeah, you probably don't remember, Brian, but President Kennedy's press conferences were a really big deal. Women all over the country on Thursday afternoon would tune in and watch President Kennedy.
I've seen him. He's very funny at those things.
He was good, and no two ways about that. And he would have people inform him who'd been asking questions in the agriculture department or over in the interior or whatever, and so he would be prepared to call on them, and he'd have the information and look pretty good. Well, my professor would raise his hand, and Kennedy called on him, and the guy had some pretty embarrassing questions to ask. He was clearly against the Vietnamese War and our involvement there, as was I, and Kennedy pokes his staff and says, where'd that guy come from? And that was the end of my college professor's work as a itinerant reporter. He never got in again. So the idea of cutting people out is not a new idea.
Quickly on that topic, Jim Griffin met when he was a soldier in the early 1960s in the U.S. Army. Jim Griffin from the Hornell IDA met President Kennedy.
Yeah, we worked together in the Area Redevelopment Administration out there.
Well, Jim Griffin says that he was amazed at Kennedy's memory. He said that the president asked Jim Griffin, where are you from? And Griffin said, you wouldn't know the name of the town. He said, no, tell me. He said, Hornell, New York. He said, oh, yeah, they're working on a highway to go through that area.
Yeah. Well, no, he's, I'm not certain Kennedy was the brightest guy around as president, but he certainly had a touch to him that was
yeah, they say he could remember. He had a great memory for things like that.
Yeah, he could be. I don't know. But, yeah, that's same period when I was out there, when Jim Griffith was out there running around as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I don't know if paths ever crossed. We were in the same agency for a while.
That's interesting.
Well, I don't know how interesting. Kind of interesting to me and Jim Griffith, but at any rate, that's,
any other Trump topics you want to cover before we go?
Yeah, there was something on the election process and watching the Democrats in the House of Representatives. That's going to get pretty bitter, I think.
Do you have any thoughts on all these votes?
I don't know where all that's going. Again, we'll just have to let. You're talking about Florida, basically. I think.
And other places, but yes.
Yeah, we'll just have to watch how that plays out, and let's hope. Let's hope today it kind of tidies everything up, but it's hard to tell. In any case, the Republicans got the majority in the Senate anyway you cut it. They just like to have one or two more senators there. But my view in the Florida situation is, frankly, the most important election in Florida and Georgia. The most important elections are for the governorship. If the Republicans end up losing the Senate seat, I mean, it's kind of a disappointment. But you really want to have a Republican in the governor's spot in Florida. And I think Georgia, I don't think there's any question that the Republican Kemp will handle that. But it is interesting to watch the Democrats pull and push and scrounge and come up with various ways of claiming that somehow they've been cheated out of a vote, when in fact, the votes are cast, and there they are, guys.
We're out of time, Doc. I wanted to thank you so much for stopping by, especially in this weather.
Well, when things are important, Brian, I try to pencil them in red in my organizer. Yes.
Thank you so much. I'll have to learn that trick.
Yeah.